Wait, where? What? I'm in a box!
Oh no. No, not the box.
This is the Escape the Zoo podcast. With your host, Daniel Clark.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Escape the Zoo podcast, where we talk everything wildlife. Today's guest is Shannon Wild, who is an absolutely incredible wildlife photographer and cinematographer. Shannon has worked with clients like Nat Geo WILD, WildAid, and the United Nations. She's written 3 books, runs photographic expeditions, and founded Wild in Africa, a business that creates handmade beaded bracelets that are very cool, but even cooler is that she donates 50% of sales to wildlife conservation groups that she's done work with in the past. Shannon is also married to another friend of the podcast, Russell MacLaughlin, who was on the show a couple months ago, and they do a lot of their work together, so you will hear us mention Russ quite a few times in the conversation. And the chat spans from their film on the Black Panther in India, to the feeling of standing next to a Komodo dragon, to what it's like to be attacked by a cheetah. It's a really fun conversation. I hope you enjoy it. So without further ado, here it is, my chat with the one and only Shannon Wild. Well, Shannon, thanks so much for taking the time to be here. I'm a huge fan of you and your husband, who was on the podcast, I think about a month and a half ago now, and really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And Russ says hi from India. We're on different continents at the moment, so I'm still in Africa, and I'll head over there soon. So
you were with him recently, though, right? I think I saw on Instagram.
Yeah, we kind of cross paths every now and then. Our lifestyle is either we're working on a project together, or we're in completely different parts of the world. So at the moment, that's different parts. It'll be the same for a week, then we split again for a month or so, and then we come back together for a few weeks, and so it's all over the place.
Well, I was thinking about that when I was prepping for this podcast, that I assume wildlife cinematography, photography in general is somewhat of an isolating job. It's people who are going out and spending long periods of time in the wild by themselves or with very few people. The ability to actually find a partner who works in that space and actually be able to spend time with kind of your life partner must be an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And I think it's pretty rare. This industry, it's very niche. So the fact that we have found each other and, compatible and got married and all that kind of thing is good. What's been really nice is during our life together, we have kind of evolved our careers to intertwine quite a lot. So while we do film and do projects separately, what's really great is when we can collaborate together. And the majority of our work, maybe 70-80% of our work is together. So we pitch a lot of our documentary ideas. So we then go in as, we're directors of photography as well as, producers and that kind of thing. So that helps when you have a level of creative control over the projects.
Right.
And then once we've had enough of each other, we can go do something else.
How did you guys meet on a shoot? I asked Russ once, but he kind of gave me like the more guy answer of like, yeah. And it was like very, very quick and short. But I don't think I ever got the full origin story.
It's quite an interesting one, actually. It's a very modern love story. So we actually met on Instagram. I was still living in Australia and working as a wildlife photographer there. So, it's not hard to imagine that we came across each other's work and started communicating. And then, obviously that went offline, off Instagram, and we started chatting every day and kind of rapidly fell in love online without having ever met each other.
Oh, wow.
And then Yeah, it was very quick, actually, a few months. And then I had a trip planned for Komodo Island. So filming and seeing Komodo dragons in the wild was like an absolute pinnacle bucket list for me.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, Russ is a reptile lover as well. So he basically said, I would love to come. So I'm like, sure. And then we met for the first time in person at Denpasar Airport in Bali on a Thursday, and we're married the next Thursday in Bali.
No way. That's awesome.
And then spent a month in Indonesia together. And then I followed him back to South Africa, and I haven't left since.
That's amazing.
I've been back home.
Really?
I am actually going, over 5 years. So I'm going home for a long overdue family, friends visit in a couple of months. So,
did your family come to Africa at all?
Yeah, a few times.
Oh my God,
So
that's an amazing story.
Taken the pressure off me a little bit because we've been so busy here that it's just, we're going one country to the next, one job to the next, and Australia just doesn't happen to be in those jobs. So the opportunity hasn't come up to go back. Yeah,
well, it's pretty amazing that it happened that way, because I could imagine it's very hard to even date when you're in the line of work that you're in. So being able to find somebody and have that happen is pretty divine intervention there.
And it's such a unique job with really interesting challenges and elements to it that I feel like if you're in different industries, it's hard for one to understand. Mm-hmm. Things like going away for long periods of time, traveling apart and that kind of thing. Whereas obviously we prefer and love to work together, but when we have to go away and work on different projects for months at a time, that's fine too. It's just part of it, and we're both supportive of fostering each other's passion because we completely understand it and are both fully invested in it.
That's so important. I actually met my girlfriend, we've been together about 5 years now too, on Hinge, which is
I just heard about that yesterday.
Yeah, it's like dating app, but it's like only friend of friends on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We went to the same college, and I knew who she was, and that's like how it got connected. But I remember when that was like 5 years ago, that I think online dating was a little less mainstream than it was. Basically right at the inflection point where it used to be like you met somebody online and like
frowned upon. Yes.
Whereas like now it's I feel like 99% of people are doing it. But I remember when I was talking to my parents and they were meeting her and all my friends, I would always be like, I would come up with some BS. Oh yeah, we both went to college together. I knew her there. And Helene would always be like, oh yeah, we met on Hinge. And then I'd be like, why are you telling them this? I don't want to talk about it. But now I'm like almost proud of it, because I don't know, it's kind of cool that it just gives you that ability. I was at the same time I was working on my own startup. I was working like 90 hours a week. There was no way I was going to be meeting anybody, or if I was having free time, I was going out with my friends.
This is the thing. I literally don't understand how you would meet people in this day and age. Like, certainly, like you're saying, in my line of work, I'm never in the one place long enough. Like, I literally, if I was single, I think I'd be single forever. It's like you just come and go all the time. So you're meeting lots of people all the time for like a week here or whatever. And then it's, I don't know how you ever hold down like communications, let alone actually getting to know somebody.
Yeah, and I'm not the type of person that can go up at the bar and be like, hey there, how are you?
Me either. The idea of dating just horrifies me.
No, I'm glad that part of my life
is over. I'm so glad
I'm
over that, yes.
That Komodo trip in general looked absolutely amazing. One of my first questions to Russ was if he felt, I remember the first piece of either of your work that I came across was you with a red camera. I'm not sure if this was that trip or a trip since
No,
then.
that was a second trip, but yeah.
But you were literally, from 2 feet away from this dragon with the red camera. And I was like, one, this woman is a badass. And two, I would be terrified in this situation. But I was asking Russ if he ever felt this like incredible need to kind of be like protective is kind of the role. And he's like, no, what are you talking about?
No, and he knows if something happens as long as he films it. Well, if he can save me, then yes, save me. And he has done in the past, because I don't know if he told you, but what was it, about 4+ years ago, I was mauled by a cheetah, and he was filming at the time. So he filmed it all, and he didn't really realize when he was initially filming that it was attacking me, because I didn't make a sound.
Oh,
so he thought it was just hugging me, like pounced on me. So he's filming away. He's like, oh, that's cute. And then someone's like, it's attacking her. So, yeah, so then you just see camera just goes down to the ground, and he did come and save me, despite the fact that there was like 6 other people around who had no idea what to do. He came and rescued me. So
yeah, he explained that.
We got both. He saved me and got footage.
It was kind of a roundabout way. He was like, yeah, it was the same path that this took. But he goes, there was one time that I filmed Shannon getting mauled by a cheetah. And I was like, you filmed it? And he was like, well, once I realized what was going on, I poked it in the eye and it let off.
Yeah, I mean, it was on me for, I think we counted when we looked at the footage, about 20 seconds that it was on my arm. She'd grabbed my arm thinking she had my throat, because she came at me from behind. And she just fully crushed my bicep.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Can you just because I want to do this story justice. Can you start at the beginning as to what scenario you were in and how this all unfolded?
Yeah. So it's a unique situation, and it's not something that it was in a controlled environment. So it was with what's considered a habituated animal. So the cheetah was not one that the general public has access to. It's not a tourist animal, but it is an animal at a sanctuary that has handlers and is used to people. So Russ and I had special access because we were there to film it doing a run. So I'm sure most people have seen on documentaries where, there might be a slow motion sequence of a cheetah running and chasing like a ribbon that's going along a line. And, you can't force an animal to do that, but there's the natural instinct of as soon as that ribbon goes, it wants to chase it. So
so that's kind of like a behind the scenes trick. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and, sometimes you'll see the ribbon and them setting it up and shooting water and whatnot.
Yeah.
So Russ was filming. I was there doing stills, and we'd just arrived. It was 9:00 in the morning, and it was November here, which is like really hot. So that's our summer. And so by, early morning, it was already sweltering, and the cheetah, was walking around. There were some handlers, and they were just kind of keeping her busy and then talking to us, and we were getting our equipment set up. And these things take a little bit of time. So she was getting a bit, I think, impatient. She knew what was coming. She wanted to chase it, and then she knew afterwards she'd get like a nice big chunk of meat as well. And I think she just wanted to get it over with, so she was in a bit of a mood. And she, in hindsight, I can see all of this. It's clear as day, the body language, all the signs that she actually gave out. But at the time, we were kind of wrapped up in getting our gear prepped, and I was trying to work out where I would position myself. And as a wildlife photographer or filmmaker, as you know, you get down low. Like that's the key. The lower you can get, the better. And so I was talking to one of the guides, and I basically said, can I kneel down and shoot from here? But like an idiot, I said it as I did it. I didn't ask her first.
Right.
I just did it and said it. And before she could even respond, she's like, which is no. I'm already down. And suddenly I'm the size of a toddler. I'm not very big at the best of times, but now I'm really, really tiny. And this impatient cheetah, who just prior to that had actually, we'd greeted her, we'd given her a little pet. She was walking around. She actually swiped a paw at Russ. And so for a cheetah that's habituated and it's facing you, like Russ was facing the cat, that's really unusual.
Yeah.
So cheetah, if you turn your back, yes, they'll come for you. If you stand your ground and turn and face them, it's usually just a standoff and it's a bluff. Now, Russ is a big guy. So out of all the people that are standing there, he's the biggest.
Right.
He's like 6 foot something, solid. And for this cheetah to swipe at the biggest guy there was actually very telling. And it's just one of those other neon signs that kind of, we just went, like we started making jokes. Well, I made a joke about how happy I was that Russ had underwear on that day because she'd actually literally cut open his pants, like right in his groin area. So we could just see these bright red underpants coming through. So we're all having a bit of a laugh and, kind of didn't really take the seriousness of the signs that she was giving us. So, fair warning, she gave it. And like I said, I completely ignored that, got complacent and knelt down. And so she was behind me. So the reason Russ had actually started filming already was because she'd swiped at him. He's like, this is interesting. Camera off.
Right.
So he'd literally just started filming. You can hear me in the background saying, can I, shoot from here? And then you just see this cheetah go through frame and she's on me before I even know. And from the back. So I had my hair down and that's why the cheetah couldn't see exactly where my neck was. And I'd actually knelt down and pretended to take a portrait shot, how I was anticipating shooting.
Yeah.
And I didn't even take a photo, so I don't know why, but I thankfully put my ear to my shoulder because I didn't have like a battery pack on my camera that day. So I actually did the whole tilt thing, my head, so it protected my neck. And so she thought my neck was where my arm was.
Oh my
so
God.
She came in and just fully wrapped her mouth and got onto my bicep fully in there. So her nose was kind of nuzzled up under my arm. And then she had her paws down and pinned me down so I couldn't get up. And her dew paws sort of punctured me I've got some bruised ribs and in the hip, and she just kind of moved.
So it was a kill grab. Like it wasn't.
She was fully. It wasn't a kiss, that's for sure. She was full force bite on my bicep, fully crushed it, and because it's a cheetah and say not a lion or a leopard, she doesn't have the jaw strength of those big cats. So otherwise, my arm would have been broken for sure. So her canines hit the bone but scraped down it as opposed to not being able to break it. But the funny thing is that it's amazing how quickly the adrenaline kicks in because I did not feel anything. It was amazing. Yeah, the whole world just slowed down and, I felt her come onto my back. I felt the pressure. I realized that I couldn't get up. So I literally just relaxed and sat into it. I knew if I fought her, she would literally tear my bicep off. So I did nothing. And she was purring on my arm as she thought she was suffocating me. So someone ran and got a stick and tried to shove it in and leverage it, which just snapped. And she went harder. And then, they couldn't get her off. Russ realized. And, he came in and put his hand in like this little side gap where her mouth was joined on and, put his thumb in her eye. And in the video, you can hear her kind of, her purring goes to like a, she gets off and then I stand up and then she went for me 2 more times after that.
What?
Yeah. Didn't get me. So thankfully, people were blocking her, but she was like fully focused. That was her meal and that was her prize and she wanted it.
Damn.
So,
Did you ever release that video?
I released it, I think, a year or 2 after it happened.
Because I saw the one where you were showing the wound, but I didn't see. I was trying to find the actual video.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I've got it on YouTube somewhere, just a little, a quick 1 minute cut together of what happened. And then, of course, for me, you know, it was quick but really slow. I could feel this pressure on my arm, like my arm was going to burst if she, you know, went any harder, but there was no sharp pain or anything. It was just pressure. And then it's not until we got her off and then I got onto a vehicle that the blood flow started to come back, and then I went into shock and all that fun stuff. So a few steps later, and yeah.
Was that all it was? Was a few stitches?
Yeah, I got. They generally, so it's all just puncture wounds and crushed. So a lot of nerve damage, a lot of muscle damage. For about a year and a half, 2 years, I had like a big, like a half crescent kind of indent in my bicep, which is healed, you know, perfectly. I just have the puncture wound scars now. So I just had one stitch for each of the main punctures, which was 5. And usually they don't like to close cat bite wounds because of the bacteria, but they were big enough that the doctor wanted to. And then the ones on my side from the claws, they left open. So, and then I just had to do antibiotics and stuff against infection and that kind of thing. But yeah, it was the pain afterwards that was the worst.
Yeah.
And then the day was awful.
But you're probably one of the only people. How many people on Earth do you think could say that I have a scar from a cheetah that attacked me? Do you think there's any other person?
Actually, surprisingly, yes, I know one other girl.
Really?
She's not a filmmaker, but she worked with wildlife. So, but for cheetah, it's very rare. You know, if it was a leopard, I could completely understand. And the silly thing is I would have behaved completely differently around a leopard. So that was a big lesson for me to not, you know, be so complacent in that situation.
Yeah, I think in general, I feel even the 6 people who are with you probably with a leopard would have been much more like focused and not 100%. Lackadaisical is what's going on.
Yeah. Leopards are crazy.
Yeah. Oh, are they?
Oh my God. So unpredictable. So I will walk on foot with a wild lion or a wild cheetah any day of the week, even still. But a leopard, I mean, I'm out filming leopards at the moment, but you don't want to surprise one, that's for sure. You do not want a leopard to feel cornered or threatened, because it will just, they have a saying over here, which I think is 100 stitches a second.
Oh my God.
It just is like thrashing, open you up. It's horrific.
Yeah, and I think that gives you like a second and a half to not die if there's 100 stitches a second.
Yeah, exactly. Depending on where it's getting you, that would not be fun. I mean, Russ, I'm sure he told you, has been bitten. Thankfully, it wasn't like a whole full-on attack, but it was a bite.
No, I didn't. I don't think you did tell me. That's crazy.
Okay. He got bitten on the calf by a leopard. He's had a few incidents over the years, actually.
Yeah.
Leopards and tigers, as you know, so it goes. But he just had two puncture wounds, very clean. So I don't think we ended up stitching them, just covered them.
Yeah. I think it's amazing too how sometimes I'll watch a video of, I don't know, a wildebeest or something getting taken down, an impala getting taken down by a lion or a leopard or a cheetah in a wildlife video, and you're always like, how is this thing bleeding profusely, getting absolutely rocked? And 1, it's calm, but 2, it's also still fighting back and not just like screaming out in agony and pain. And I think it's really interesting to think that you had the same reaction as a human, that it's really this fight for survival where your body's like, I know this is messed up, but I'm not going to make you feel pain, and you need to get out of this situation.
Pain is, at that point, pain is not beneficial in any way. And, you know, I think nature's quite ingenious that way. So once that adrenaline kicks in, the focus just purely goes on to survival. And I take a bit of peace away from that. I really do hope that that is the situation for wildlife, you know, that are hunted. But you know, it's the shock of it all just kind of takes all that kind of thing away.
Well, cheetahs in general are kind of struggling, right? Because they do fall in that weird place where they're not nearly as powerful as a leopard or a lion. And but they still need a good amount of food to survive. Like, they're the most
Ostrich.
struggling of the bigger cats in Africa right now. Is that true?
In Africa, I believe so, yes. It's technically not a big cat. It's considered a lesser cat, but, as a general blanket term, definitely. There's a few issues that are facing them. Obviously, the usual stuff, habitat loss. There's retaliation from farmers if they take livestock, for example. But they're quite picky breeders, and so there can be some real issue with turnover of young. There's a high mortality rate as well for the young, but there is in other big cats as well. But take a lion, for example, it has a whole pride to protect it, whereas a cheetah doesn't. And then you've got the competition of food with any kind of breed of prey. So even a hyena, leopard, lion. So what you'll notice is when a cheetah has a successful hunt, they will feed so quickly, like they will gorge themselves as quick as possible before any other predator will realize what's happening, will smell it or hear it, because as soon as any of that competition comes in, the cheetah can't do anything. So it basically has to leave the kill and run for its life.
Find another one, yeah.
Exactly. And they also, energy-wise, they have a very high turnover, so they will want to hunt every 2 days, whereas lions, they can go a bit longer. Leopard, they'll pull it up a tree and they could feed on a carcass for, over the course of a few days. So a cheetah's like in there as much as possible. They're quite picky feeders as well. They don't like their meat dirty, so they will eat it sort of from the top and, the best bits, and you'll notice that they'll avoid anything that has dirt or like leaf litter or anything that's then going into it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
an interesting cat.
Yeah, one of my favorite anecdotes about cheetahs is that they are struggling so hard because the infant mortality rate is like crazy high, right? Like 85+%.
Very high.
But they're these essentially super moms that have historically raised all of their young, essentially like time after time after time, like 5+ litters to complete adulthood. And the species is really dependent on these moms who are just incredibly good at their job, which I think is really fascinating.
There's one that comes to mind, which is a very well-known female cheetah in the Masai Mara, and it's not uncommon for her to have litters of 5 or so, and she's very successful. So yeah, and she's definitely had multiple litters over the years, so she's a really good mum. And I've been lucky enough to see her in the Mara when I've been shooting there. She's been on a few documentaries. She has like a name that she's been called, and I can't think of it at the moment.
Yeah, I'll try and find it and link it in the show notes if I can come across it online.
She'll be easy to find because she is the cheetah and her offspring that are the ones that climb on the vehicles. It's always in the media. So that's not a common behavior, and it's not, you go to the Mara and every cheetah you encounter is going to jump up on your vehicle and use it as a vantage point. It is this female. She's developed this behavior, and she has taught it to, as a byproduct, her cubs have learned that behavior.
Really?
So it's purely a generational in her line only. But the rangers are trying to discourage that behavior just because it's such close interaction. It's not necessarily ideal. But yeah, she should be pretty easy to find.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy who runs some photographic safaris in the Masai Mara, and he was explaining that at first I didn't know it was this one specific cheetah, but he was able to like take selfies with these these cheetahs that would come onto the truck, and now it's almost entirely frowned upon because too many people would freak out and get scared that something was going to happen, and they'd drive off, and that's super dangerous for the cat, obviously.
Or because it has shown up in the media so much, that level of complacency can trickle through. And as I learned, that is not a good thing. My animal experiences have always been dangerous encounters have been with so-called habituated animals versus wild. And I think it's because, we generally behave differently around them. We approach, potentially closer. We are not as cautious as we would be in the wild. So, there's always a few close calls.
How about those Komodo dragons, bringing it back a little bit? Is that,
oh, yes.
were you not nervous at all with what was going on there? Because there was, this is, at first I was like, oh, maybe they're like, it's not their feeding time, or like they're a little like more chill than you think. And then you were filming this one thing of two dragons. I don't know what they were
ripping
eating.
a carcass apart.
Yeah. And I was like, I would be horrified that was going to be me. What was going through your head? Like, not saying
I
like
was just mesmerized.
Yeah.
So the way that I actually got into this industry, the way that I got into photography in the first place, was from reptiles. So for me, reptiles are like the best. I love them. And I used to keep them as pets, and I was very involved in the herpetological community back in Australia. And so I've worked with them for decades. So it's like any animal, they actually have behavioral tells. Mm-hmm. They communicate with you with body language and that kind of thing. They're just not necessarily as overt as, say, mammals. But once you become aware of them, then it's certainly possible to read. So, I'm quite comfortable around them. They were licking my camera lens and stuff like that. It was quite fascinating. But there's a very distinct difference in, like I said, body language and behavior and focus, and especially with the eyes, when an animal is curious versus in a hunt mode, like completely different. So for me, I could quite easily tell they were curious, but also somewhat cautious themselves. So, if I had my tripod set up in the water at certain points, and the Komodo was very curious, wanted to come and see what the equipment was, what I was, and they use their tongue, obviously, to taste their environment. They can't, pick something up and go, what's this? They have to taste it. That's their world. So you could see one was like coming in really tentatively, and he's, doing the tongue, and he's trying to get information, and then a wave sort of came up and splashed him, and he kind of went back a few steps, and then he came back in. So he was very cautious. So, the feeling was mutual. It wasn't like, they walk around and they have this immense sense of power and confidence, definitely.
Understandably so.
But they are cautious as well. They don't want to go into a situation that they could potentially be hurt either. So, yeah, they were just very curious. And then, between themselves, like I got some great footage of close-ups of, like blood dripping from their mouths.
Oh, yeah.
And they were eating, and it was insane. So as soon as the blood aspect or the kill kicks in, and I've had experience with this with monitor species, smaller monitors, but monitors no less, in Australia, where as soon as they go into feeding mode, it becomes like a frenzy, and you want to get out there. Like, I've been bitten by monitors in Australia. I've had a knuckle crushed by one that's like literally, tiny compared to a Komodo. So I'm fully aware if that Komodo bit down on you, I'm going to take your arm off, like easily. I've got scars and this busted knuckle from one that's head was maybe, I don't know, be lucky to be 2 inches the head. So
yeah, and the Komodos are venomous too, right? Are monitors venomous?
Yeah. Actually, most monitor species have a rudimentary venom. So it's believed that is a blanket across the species. There's a guy in Australia who is a venomologist, and he was the one that discovered in Komodo dragons, and then I think subsequently other monitor species. So what I found interesting is when I was bitten on the knuckle by this young one, the wound didn't want to heal, so it bled and bled. So like in Komodos, the venom has an anticoagulant, and that's basically what leads to extreme bleeding, and then that leads to shock, and then the animal is not really in a position to heal or protect itself anymore. So it's not the whole bacterial thing that obviously went in the media for a long time, but now you have an open wound that won't close because your blood won't coagulate. So the bacteria is getting in there from the environment. Yes, some from the mouth, just like any other animal. If it's a water buffalo, for example, it goes and sits in a pond or a body of water where it feels safer. That is full of bacteria, animal feces, whatever. So
Right.
that's where that septicemia is going to come in, and the rest is kind of history.
Oh, that makes sense. It also is all making sense, seeing that reptiles were really your first love. I remember I was reading, kind of prepping for this conversation, and you have 3 books that you've written. The first was How to Do Wildlife Photography. The second was How to Do Pet Photography. And then the third was Caring for Your Netted Dragon. And I was like,
which
that's
actually,
very random.
Yeah, it is so random. On a timeline, that was actually my first book.
Oh, okay. Is
So
that
the
like, I was like, is the netted dragon, is
Yeah.
that like a weird subculture of like people who love netted dragons as a specific species?
It is a very niche book, yes. So they were my specialty in Australia. So it's a lizard species called the central netted dragon, and it's endemic to Australia only. And so everyone knows the bearded dragons, also from Australia, but very, very popular in the pet industry, and really great temperaments. So an easy animal to care for. There's a level of what would the word be? The animal knows that's being cared for. It knows where its food comes from. There's a level of affection there. And I found that these central netted dragons, which are quite a bit smaller, and they're quite long and thin, also extremely charismatic. And when I first had one as a pet, there was no care information accessible. And so I kind of took it upon myself to do the research. So I spent about 3 years researching their ecophysiology and their captive care as well, and what's best for them. And in compiling that, decided to make a book out of it, because obviously if they're a popular animal, people need to know how to care for them properly and do it justice. So, hence the book came out.
No, that's really funny. So. I never knew. When I was a kid, my cousin, I was very close. He was basically my best friend, still is. He had, I think they were bearded dragons, but I remember crying, talking to my mom. I was like, how come Nolan gets to have these dragons? And like, my mom wouldn't let me have like a dog or a cat or anything forever, unless we've had one dog and one cat, and both were strays that ended up on our doorstep somehow.
That's good.
Yeah, and we would take those in, but I remember being so envious for like 3 or 4 years because my cousin had these bearded dragons. I thought they were so cool.
They are adorable.
What was your inclination towards reptiles? I feel like that's a lesser of the appreciated species groups.
Yeah, and especially for me, it wasn't something that came from my parents. My dad was a farmer, an old school farmer, so reptiles are kind of like only good snake is a dead snake kind of thing, and I was raised that way. But for me, there was just this innate, deep-seated fascination with all animals. But I don't know, the reptiles just stood out to me as really interesting, and I honestly don't know. It's just there.
Yeah.
So it kind of
cool.
became an obsession.
I almost feel like they don't get their proper due. So
yeah, and that's, I hope that I can portray some of that in my work, that they are so beautiful and fascinating and just interesting. I mean, even if, like, I get it that people don't like them or they're conditioned not to like them, but if people can just step back and see, okay, wow, that is a really beautiful color or beautiful markings, or, but they're not out to attack everyone. They're just trying to live their lives. I'd rather avoid conflict. But you can certainly observe and admire from afar, and yeah, they're incredible.
Yeah, this might sound a little strange, but I was watching this video of a snake yesterday, and I think if people can take the time and look at how freaking crazy it is that this thing doesn't have legs and can move that fast and like slither around, it's crazy. It's like, it's such a mind-blowing thing to have in your world that I just remember being so enamored by Pokemon when I was a kid and being like, imagine if I lived in a real world with Pokemon. And it's like you do, just with like way more than 152 or whatever the number of Pokemon were back in the day. You just need to appreciate them for the fact that they're real and not.
There is so much crazy stuff out there. And, admittedly, a lot of my work and commercial work, so wildlife documentaries, most of it is your more well-known species. But if I ever get the opportunity, like, Komodo dragons and Komodo Island in general, I will take it. I love it. And there was actually a species of viper on Komodo Island that I was desperate to find. And the first time I went, all those years ago, I did not find it, and I was really bummed about that. I barely saw any snakes, actually, and I'm always on the lookout. And then when Russ and I went, I guess it'll be 2 years ago now, when we shot the Red Collective. It'll be 2 years in August, I think. So we actually found one, and it's called a white-lipped viper, and usually they're green. But on Komodo Island, there is this blue face that is completely unique, to my understanding, just to Komodo Island. And it is pastel blue. I'm not even kidding. It is crazy. So this snake, highly venomous, but quite tiny. And it's like this stunning pastel blue with like ochre orange eyes. And then the tip of its tail is orange.
Whoa.
Like nuts. And so you do not understand how happy I was to find that animal.
Oh my God.
Amazing. So there's like some little clips in the Red Collective where I'm like, putting my hand over, like just kind of waving it over the top of it. So out of strike range, but to encourage it to put its tongue out so that, if it senses movement, it's like, oh, what's that? And like same with the Komodo dragon, sticks the tongue out and it's trying to taste, the molecules in the air to determine what is around it. So, it was beautiful.
Oh, I have to look that up. I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome, and something that's often underappreciated with folks in your line of work is how not only are you putting yourself in these situations and actively looking out for those species, but to be able to know that if I wave my hand, there's a good likelihood that it's going to become engaged and stick out its tongue is something that is a species understanding at such a granular level.
And I think that's key. That's really, I think that's what's going to set you apart in any genre, is really understanding your subject and not just understanding it, but I think having the passion for it, because I feel like that is going to come through from your work. So
100%.
I could shoot something else and I could do it technically no problem, but I feel like you could tell I didn't really love it. Like a interiors shoot or a still life or something like that. It doesn't have, the funny thing is even landscapes, like I can go out and it's really beautiful landscapes and wow, this is gorgeous. And I'll take some pictures, but unless it actually has an animal in the landscape, I'm not quite as excited.
Yeah, it's just not going to do it.
It's the animals 100%.
No, I'm the same way. My Instagram is like, or at least who I've been following is like slowly whittled down to first it was just nature and beauty and everything. And now it's literally like, I want the most badass animal photos and videos that I can see.
Oh gosh, there's pressure. I need to up my game a bit, I think. There's some incredible photographers out there.
Yeah, well, you're at the top of them, that's for sure. I'm serious. I wouldn't just say that. I think you and Russ are, unbelievable. When I first saw that Red Collective video, I was like, yes.
Oh, thank you.
To the point where I know
and
we could never be.
And first female filmmaker highlighted too, which I'm chuffed about.
Oh, really? I actually had that down as something I wanted to talk to. And my girlfriend actually specifically, we were talking about the conversation I was going to have yesterday, and she's like, I want to know more about females in the industry. And I've asked a little bit with Margot Raggett's been on the podcast, Michelle Valbert's been on the podcast. But I don't know if I've ever specifically asked, like, is it difficult being, is it a male dominated industry in general? I would assume yes.
Yeah, it's definitely a male dominated industry. Of course, as a woman, I have nothing else to compare it to.
Right.
I've also, I don't know, I think, it can come down to personality. I haven't had too much drama. There's a little bit. I mean, you'll always get the guys that kind of think, I don't know, they treat you like, you've got your camera, that's so cute, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, like,
screw them.
Whatever. Yeah. And the other day, Russ and I were out at a wildlife event. It was a fundraising auction. It's quite funny. There's a guy that was a friend of his family, and he was up doing the auction, and he, in front of everyone, was trying to encourage Russ and I to bid on something. And he said something he can say, oh, Russ, the photographer girlfriend looks like she's interested in this. Oh my God.
Oh no.
But anyway, I mean, I've only been shooting maybe I'm quite a bit older than Russ, so a wee bit longer, but anyway, it's just part and parcel. But honestly, I don't know. If I'm passionate about something and I want to learn it or I want to be involved, the blinders go on and I just go. I don't really care. And when I used to be a graphic designer and an art director for quite a few years first. So when I got out of school, that's the job that I went into. And it wasn't until my mid-20s that I picked up a camera for the first time. So I did start doing it as a hobby, and I am self-taught, so I just sort of went out and photographed animals because that's what I was interested in. And, it was one of those things that initially, and even a few years into it when I was starting to get paid work and really push myself in it, that the people around me, friends and family are kind of like, oh, that's a passing hobby, you know what I mean? Like, that's not going to ever be a career. And for me, I've always grown up adoring wildlife documentaries and photos and National Geographic and Attenborough, and that's just amazing. And I wanted to work with animals when I was young, and I also had this creative inclination. And once I was a teenager, and I kind of obviously went down that creative graphic design side. But it's nice that it eventually came full circle and I was able to combine the two passions.
Right.
But, I think at some point you get to where people then they start looking at your work as opposed to you. So I'm generally judged on my work as opposed to that I'm a woman creating that work. You'll always get, the chauvinist guy. That's just life. But I feel like most 99% of the men that I engage with are 100% supportive, and I've only ever been encouraging. So yeah, I mean, there's a definite disparity in the amount of women in this industry, but it's changing. It's definitely changing, like a lot of industries are, where we're in this beautiful era of women can do anything, so they are.
Right.
So it's nice to be in that. I think it's a nice time, and really seeing that shift. And there's plenty of men that are really supportive and empowering, to women in these industries. And it's a very physical job, so I get that. A lot of people might not physically want to cope with this very harsh conditions. There's no luxury. It's rough, but there are so many men that I know that would never do that either.
Yeah.
It's, what I mean? Like, it's too rough.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a sex thing as opposed to, if you're passionate about the subject enough, the rest falls away and it's worth it.
Yeah. And I mean, I look at, if you were to name my top 10 wildlife photographers and cinematographers, I think at least 5 of them would be females, from you to Christina Mittermeier to Amy Vitale.
Amy.
Yeah, I mean,
it's shifting, and it's shifting quickly, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I liked how you said it, where it wasn't, oh yeah, it's becoming more accommodating of a livelihood for women, or it's not super chauvinistic. It was more like, no, I wanted to do this, so I did it. You know what I mean? It's like,
no, exactly. I'm, personality wise, female, male, whatever. If I wanted to do it,
I'd make it happen.
Go. Yeah.
What project are you working on now? Is there one specific documentary or project that you're most excited about?
I'm juggling 2 at the moment. So we've had a bit of an overlap where one has just started and one is finishing. So our documentary in India on the Black Panther is wrapping up. So very excited about that.
So
we've been out in the field almost a year. Very tough conditions. The most difficult documentary ever that I've ever worked on. Yeah, the hardest to date.
In terms of the heat or like the hours?
God, everything. How long have you got?
Well, it looks like it makes sense, because it looks like you're taking your vehicle that you bring out there. It looks like a tank. Like it's
and well, there's 2. Russ and I go in separate vehicles, and in the morning we go out and we go different directions and we go look for this panther. There are no tracking, there's no collars, there's no tracking, nothing. It is extremely dense jungle. So, compare that to a documentary in Africa where we're like, this is really tough. And now we've filmed in India. We're like, Africa's easy. It's like a bit more open. So visibility is easier.
Right.
Tracking is easier. So in Africa, we'll track by the ground. There will be pug marks and things like that. Quite often you can go off road. We have access to everywhere, so we can really follow animals, and we can stay out late with them. Like there's all sorts of things to it. This particular documentary in India is extremely strict. So it's a very dense jungle. Mm-hmm. There's basically a corridor that we can work in that that we're allowed to drive on, and B, that we can even see anything. Mm-hmm. So we can only film if the panther decides to come out into that corridor.
Right.
In a massive jungle. So that obviously doesn't happen a lot. So then it's a very large area, so we have to be in the right place at the right time. There's no comms. Radios are completely banned, which is how we communicate between vehicles and other vehicles in Africa. You all communicate together. So if another vehicle, even if it's not on the documentary, but it's in the area, mm-hmm. comes across a pride of lions on a hunt, they radio it in, and we're like, great, we can go over there. There is none of that in India. So we have to communicate via phones, but there's no signal. So there are like little spots that might have a bit of signal, and you both have to have both vehicles in the same or both in a spot that has signal that you can communicate. So if I come across the panther and I want to let Russ know, because he's in a different vehicle with different filming equipment. Right. So one of us has like a gimbal shot attached to the vehicle, which is what mm-hmm. I'm in. Russ might be in the other vehicle on the long lens. So it's a very different look. We both want to get in and shoot at the same time. Mm-hmm. I basically can't contact him to tell him that. So at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, I saw the panther.
Yeah. And do you even get the, like, what is the time frame when you see the panther? I can't imagine that there's a huge amount of time to get, even if you got in touch with Russ, that he could get there in time to see it in that corridor.
It'd depend on where it was. So, panther might come out and he literally might walk from one side of the forest corridor across to the other. So you've seen him for like 15 seconds. That's it. Mm-hmm. And just because you've seen it doesn't mean the vehicle is in a position where you can film it. So the roads are very narrow and we're not allowed off road. So if the panther pops out in a way and the camera's on the other side of the vehicle, we have to turn the vehicle around 360. We can't do that everywhere. So we have to drive off, go somewhere that we can turn the vehicle around, then come back, no panther.
And are they pretty
It's,
spooked, or is that panther pretty spooked by the car too? The noise
no,
of it?
thankfully it's getting better. So we started filming about a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
and he was getting pretty relaxed already because we're in an area where there are tourist vehicles that can go out. It's a limited number, but they're out there. So he's grown up getting used to them. But over this past year, his relaxation around vehicles has increased immensely. So Russ actually sent me a message just a few hours ago saying the panther came out, walked right past the vehicle where he was, and sat down right there.
Whoa.
And he didn't even film it. He couldn't film it because he didn't want to spook it. It was so close, and I don't think could have focused that close. And he just kind of let it do its thing, make sure that it sees the vehicle not as, a threat or scary at all, and just kind of have its experience and go. So there's definitely times where, maybe another vehicle's come in, or, a tourist vehicle or whatever, and maybe that's, it was a bit too loud and it ran off. But, for the most part, it comes down to the vehicle and its behavior around the animal. And as long as you're not tormenting the animal, it learns that it's just another thing in its environment that it doesn't have to be worried about. So
well, in a backwards way, that's kind of cool for us, because I would imagine, at least in my experience, one of the difficulties I always have is a lot of why you get into wildlife photography, cinematography, media in general is because you love spending time in nature, in the wildlife, being present, enjoying, like, just being in the presence of these animals. And in a moment like that, I could imagine if you're only seeing this black panther 1 in 5 days for like a 30-second chunk, that is really hard to focus on anything but filming as much as humanly possible. So if you're kind of physically stopped from filming because it's too close and you're scared to spook it, it's almost like a very rare moment that you can just appreciate the animal.
So you could obviously start up the vehicle and move away so you can film it, but you risk it then is spooked, gets up, and you don't get the shot anyway. So it's better to take that opportunity to build that trust, because then the next time it's when you get your shot.
Well, that's good to hear that the Black Panther is kind of cool with the vehicles, because Russ was saying that the Asian elephants are like horrible around them. They're just like... They're
so aggressive. It's crazy. So different to African elephants. It's nuts.
Well, I feel like every time you view a video, you see 9 videos for every one video of 9 African elephant videos for every one video of an Asian elephant that you see. And I saw this video that you posted of the dholes, which are the wild dogs in India, basically like surrounding this pack of Asian elephants. And even in that moment, just tormenting it. Yeah. And, but I thought that I could even see that Asian elephant, you can see, has a little bit more aggressive, like tantrum like nature than I've ever seen from an African elephant. Yeah. Like, it was upset.
So much trumpeting. It was running around. And, even once those dogs kind of cooled off and backed away, this elephant was still adamant in telling everyone how annoyed it was. Still trumpeting, still running, runs over to the rest of the herd, works them up, comes back, and then the dogs are like, okay, we'll play.
And you think the dogs are just like screwing around just for fun? Loving it.
Yep. 100%. You could see. And there was some wild boar there as well. And they were chasing them around as well and tormenting them until the boars turned around and started chasing the dogs, and then they got a bit of their own medicine. But I think it was purely just entertainment value for them.
I think they're
very, very charismatic.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite parts of my conversation with Russ was that no matter what we were talking about within the India documentary, he would always come back to the dholes. Like, outside of the panther, like, obviously he loved the panther, but then I would want to talk about tigers or monkeys or anything else going on. He's like, but you got to know about the dholes. He's like, I don't know why I like them so much, but I do.
Oh, no. And it's funny because I don't know if it was the first few months, or certainly at the beginning, going out into the field every day, we didn't really see them. And so in the back of my mind, it was this very rare thing, and it actually is. But in the specific area that we're filming, it's like once we saw them, it's like nearly a daily occurrence that we would see them again. They'd always be in this area. So we could basically, at a certain time in the morning, go to the certain area and almost guarantee that they've just woken up and they're kind of getting ready for the day in this one particular spot. They're interacting with each other and they're getting amped up for a hunt. And it's just, they're really interesting. But
and they're
we
super
have so
cute.
much. They are very cute. They're jackal size, but they look like dingoes. So it's like a mini dingo. But yeah, I got to a point we have so much footage of them. Nat Geo are basically like, because after the first sort of 8-month chunk of filming and we send all the footage in and they're editing, they're like, no more dog footage. They're like,
that's so funny.
It's so cute. And they're like, come on.
Has Nat Geo helped to, this was something I was really interested by, is when you're dealing with a panther that you see so infrequently and really in this one general corridor, I would imagine building a narrative around a documentary would be very difficult. Now that you guys are further along in the process, has Nat Geo kind of figured out where they're going with it, or is that kind of behind the scenes? Can you not talk about it?
No, we're involved in that side of it. So we went over to the States, to Washington, where Nat Geo is based, and went and met with the editor. And so after the first 8 or so months of filming, and that's the bulk of our filming, the editor had quite a bit to work with to build, a frame of the documentary and get a sense for it. And it's funny, after you've been in the field for that long, you kind of forget what you filmed. You have highlights in your mind, but we're out there like all day, every day, day after day. It kind of just blurs into like one reel of continuous footage.
Yeah.
So we didn't really know what we had. And also we're too close to it. So being able to see it from an editor's perspective, and he's pieced it together into a narrative, and Russ and I were just blown away. We're like, oh, thank God. We have a documentary. Thank God. And that very much comes down to, an editor can ruin the most amazing footage, but it can also make the crappy footage, it can make something amazing out of it. So thankfully for us, he has made something amazing.
That's cool.
Done things that we would never think of, like really, really cool. So yeah, we're really excited, and we kind of went, pressure went off a little bit.
Yeah, calm down the nerves.
Now go back into the field. We've got a shot list of what the gaps are, and we go in with a very specific list of what we need and want from the second part. So yeah, and then obviously if we see the most epic encounters and film it, then that can go in and replace something else. But no, it's very, very exciting, and it's a tricky subject. Kudos to Nat Geo for having faith in us, because it's such an elusive animal. It's one animal in this forest, so if something happens to it, we don't have a documentary anymore. We have to think of something else to film. Yeah. There's a lot of pressure, and at one point the cat, we went out for almost 2 months straight every single day, and we didn't see the cat at all. So we're at that point where like, is it dead? Is he left? Gone to a different forest, or is he just never coming into the part that we can access anymore? Like Nat Geo, like, have you seen the panther? Seen the panther? Seen the panther? We're like, no. Each week, no. Each week, no.
Yeah.
I can tell they're kind of starting to freak out. And we even had some of the execs of Nat Geo Wild come out for a week with us, and they were so great. They came out every single day that they were there, which is tough going. It's hard conditions. We go out for a long time, but there's no food. Like we just go and that's it. And it's uncomfortable and it's hot, or depending on the time of year, it's freezing, and it's just tough conditions. And you could understand for someone that's not used to it or not conditioned to it, because it is a fitness that you build up. It's very specific. you could understand that someone would want to maybe do half a day, or they do like 4 or 5 days. Then they're like, okay, got a good idea of it. They were absolute troopers. 3 women, top execs, and they came out every single day, the whole time, and it was amazing. They didn't see the panther. That was like right at the end of this big chunk of time that we hadn't seen it. So, you know, that can go both ways. In one way, it helps to reiterate to them how incredibly difficult this subject matter and this forest that we're working in is. It was really great for them to get a firsthand experience and perspective of it, because, you know, we can say on the phone,
it's really
that's
hard.
really hard. And,
Yeah.
you know, everybody says that. So they got to see firsthand. And then I think it was the following week that we saw the panther again after 2 months. So we were able to go back and go, he's alive! He's alive!
That must have been like a huge moment.
So much pressure. We were like, there was celebration, I can assure you.
Oh,
I don't drink, but I had a drink. So yeah, that was very happy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think, sorry, I have like 12 things that I was like, oh, I want to talk more about that. And then we kept going. I'm going to kind of hit on a few of them. One, I think that the editor is probably the most underappreciated piece of any documentary, hands down, in the fact that,
honestly, the hardest job ever.
yeah, it's like if you're filming a fictional like feature film or something like that, like there's a script, there's something you're following.
Yeah,
like, there's still a lot of work
list
to be done
Yeah.
as an editor, but it's a little more limiting. Whereas a lot of times, like when you're filming a documentary, you're just getting as much footage as you possibly can, and you're like, here, please do
Make
something with
out
this,
of it.
you know. And
It needs to be compelling and yes,
crazy.
emotive, and absolutely no, and especially for an editor that hasn't been on location. So, you know, take 12 months of filming, and we're filming this. We've got 3 cameras going. There's a lot going on. So if we're not seeing the panther, we're filming normal colored leopards. We're filming tigers, dolls, monkeys, the deer, like all of it. So there's a lot of footage, especially every day for that long. And we're also filming extremely high resolution. So the file sizes are a bit insane. And then this editor gets dumped with all of this footage, which has absolutely no context. And we have to give them a bit of context. And then every day of all the files that we have a log sheet that's running, and it has a very basic description of what's happening in the clip. So, you know, it has a file name, the clip name. It'll have a brief description. So it might say Black Panther, you know, sitting on a tree branch or whatever.
Right.
And we'll give him an indication of the kind of vegetation, you know, what season. Is it lush green season? Is it dry season? So he has a bit of context, that kind of thing. But other than that, it's a completely foreign world and concept. And there's no reference point. There's no reference of, oh, yes, that was that day. Or, oh, yeah, the panther is looking or behaving like this because out of frame he can see this happening or whatever. So I can't even begin to explain how difficult it is. And Russ and I do edit, not to the level that, you know, a proper editor does, but we've edited, you know, shorter things, and it is so difficult. And it can go any number of ways. You can take this footage and you can put it together, and like it's like this blank canvas, and it's so overwhelming. You're like, how am I going to put this together?
Yeah.
It's too much, and it's so time consuming, and there's so many options, and you know, just put me in the bush and let me film the animals.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was talking to you
it's
before.
tough, but it's easier.
Right.
Yeah.
I was talking to you before we started recording about my documentary on the overpopulation of feral cats in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And I can edit archaically compared to a professional, but I put together the storyline, and even to the point where at first I thought I was going to do the whole thing myself. So I kind of edited. I was like, this is pretty good. I think it's
Very
solid.
optimistic.
And then I showed it to my friend who, living in Los Angeles, all of my friends work in film, entertainment, et cetera. And I have one friend who is, I mean, absolute genius wizard, like next level when it comes to editing.
It is next level.
And he's like, I was like, do you mind just taking a quick pass at it and seeing if you would? Thankfully, he's ended up, the relationship grew way more than I ever expected it to. I thought he'd look at it for a day, and now him and I have been working on it together for like 3 months. But in 2 days, he was like, what if we did this? And then he showed me it, and I was like, oh my God, this is like, I was like, I don't know if you can appreciate, like fully appreciate. This is something that I filmed. I'm speaking to him, not you. I was like, I filmed this for such a long period of time, edited through this content for such a long period of time. I've been working on this film for like a year. And in 2 days, he made it 3 times better than it already was. Yeah. And it's just like validates so much of what you're doing. But yeah,
like I said, it's the make or break. It literally, you could have the best footage in the world, and a bad editor will ruin that. That you need to have a good editor, and they think in a completely different way. Mm-hmm. And so for me, for example, I have a creative inclination, but it's more visual and it's a bit more literal. Whereas, an editor, to be able to create a story, and like I said, pull on the heartstrings and build not only momentum but tension and all of those things, that is a pure art form, and it's definitely a skill that I do not have. So I have a huge amount of respect for it.
Even on another level too, even if you were that level of editor, I think when it's a film that you're making, you need to bring somebody else in who's not as attached to the project as you are, because there's times where I'm like, what do you mean that shot's not interesting to you?
I know you're too close to it. I know.
And like everything especially is so important to you. And like when they start to pull away pieces, it's like painful because you're like, no, I love that shot. But he's like, yeah, you and only you are going to be interested in that, that level of detail.
Or if you're so emotionally attached to a shot because it was so hard to get or it took so long. Mm-hmm. But in the overall scheme of things, if, an editor can see that doesn't really help the story. You're just emotionally attached to it. That's kind of, it's hard to separate yourself from that. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Do you ever shoot the editor an email and be like, can you reconsider putting this back in there?
At this point, I was so blown away with this first pass. I'm just like, I trust you. And honestly, by the time I'd gone back and seen that first part, between then and when we'd last shot, it had been quite a few months, because obviously we had so much footage, he needed so long to even just start on it, that I've forgotten half the things I filmed. I'm like, did I film that? Or Russ, did you film that?
Right.
I don't even know. It's honestly, it's all a blur. And, we're out there so long, the days are so long that most of the time we're basically just sleep deprived and delirious, that I just have no idea what's going on. So we're just in like repeat mode, because it's just us, and we don't have a crew out there. So we're dumping our footage, we're categorizing it, we're backing it up. So it takes so long. Usually on bigger shoots, you would have like a data wrangler who's doing that through the night for you, so that your cards are cleared, you go out fresh in the morning. So no, we have, we got 3 cards running, and I've got a laptop with my 2 readers in both USB ports, and because clearly I need to update my laptop. And, we'll dump a 1 terabyte red card, and it will take hours. Like my computer just can't cope. So it's dumping 2, and then I'll have to set an alarm for like midnight to wake up. And I know that they're done, so I can put the 3rd card in, the final card.
God.
Has to be cleared. Then we get up at sunrise, and then we go out and film all day. And, oh, my God, it's honestly, we're just, sleep deprived. Yeah. And it's
I work on some commercial shoots out here in LA to pay the bills. And there's nothing worse than finishing a shoot that you've been on for 12 to 14 hours. And you're super excited, you're ready to go home, and then the digital tech is like, oh, I'm offloading some footage, it's going to be another hour and 15 minutes. And you're like, no, I want to go home so bad.
I know. It's Every time I put one of these red cards in, it's like 5 hours to copy. damn you. So go have some dinner, and then I'm like, I have to go to bed now because I've got to get up at 4:30, and I just have to set that alarm. Like, there's no way I can't function on. Really, I need 8 hours, but I do not get 8 hours.
Oh, speaking of 4:30, something that in preparation for this conversation made me, it sounds stupid, but it's genuinely made me like very, very happy, was I was reading this article that you were in that talks about being a coffee snob. And
yes,
I am so biologically dependent on coffee. It's bad. Like I love it so much, but it's genuinely the best thing in my life and the worst thing in my life at the same time, in the sense that it makes me so happy and energetic and productive.
Yes.
But if I don't have it, I'm literally like can be sick. Like I'll get headaches and like
you,
feel terrible.
You will then appreciate how sad this is, but how excited I am when I go to bed at night thinking about the coffee that I'm going to have in the morning. Like, that's just sad. But yes, but I'm not like, I can't do, it has to be a cappuccino.
Oh God, that is,
no, like
that's
seriously,
that's another level.
I can't do like American drip coffee. I'm sorry, that's not coffee. Let's just get that out of the way. You know, it's just, I can't do it. I can't do instant. I can't do. And so we're out in the middle of nowhere. There's no cappuccino unless I make it a cappuccino. And I would honestly, as much as I love coffee, I'd rather go without rather than have like bad coffee.
Wow.
So
wow.
I bought a coffee machine.
This is genuinely a level of pretension that I fully share, but I appreciate it. Yes. You and me love this. Everybody else listening is like these pretentious
I know.
people.
Oh my God. I know. But let me put some context in, so hopefully I can get some sympathy. So okay, we're staying in this little shack. It is very basic. We've got running water. We only have hot water at like certain times when someone goes out and actually lights the fire under where the water's,
right.
held and whatever. So it's very basic. And so we're getting up so early. There's no real time or facilities to make like food or anything.
Right.
And so I was going out initially in the mornings, and we'd have some biscuits and some tea. Like, it's India, so they have their chai. They have their tea. That's easy to make and get and whatever. So we'd go out with a thermos of tea and some biscuits. So we'd go out first thing in the morning, and, say probably the shortest stint that we would do before we would come back, if it was super hot and nothing was happening, would be 6 hours. So for those 6 hours, basically, there's nothing to eat. So we've got water, we've got tea, and some of our biscuits. So literally, other than the panther and tigers, the highlight of going out in the morning would be like tea break. Like, oh my God, I can have some sustenance because I'm literally like falling asleep. I need energy. So after a few months in, I'm like, this is crazy. Screw it. I'm buying a coffee machine. I have access to water and I have access to power. I can make a coffee. So I get up in the morning a lot earlier than Russell. Russell will get out of bed at the absolute last second that like we physically have to leave. I get up maybe half an hour before that. And so I'm there with the coffee machine and I'm making us cappuccinos. I'm making extra to put in a thermos. And he wakes up to a cappuccino on his side table. Wow. So it's not that rough for him. I'm having my coffee and I'm like so happy. So then I can go out and have my little thermos of coffee as we go, and then I'll have my biscuits and I'm so happy and chuffed. And then that's fine. I can go for my 6, 8, whatever hours, and then we'll come back and it'll be like first meal of the day and then we'll get to eat. And so I hope that puts some context on how vitally important coffee is to this production.
Yes.
Otherwise, the filmmakers have to be fueled. Otherwise, the quality of the content will go down.
No, but it made me really happy because I was reading this article. It was talking about you traveling with like an AeroPress and like vacuum sealed beans. And I'm not joking. Like, I've always had this anxiety around the fact that for me, I'm hoping that this documentary parlays into things and I can get another big documentary shoot coming sooner than later. And one of my biggest fears is that this last documentary was in Hawaii. I mean, I was sleeping in Airbnbs and like could make coffee in the morning. My biggest fear is that I'm going to go into these remote locations and not have access to coffee and be sick and not be able to film.
Yeah.
And so and I saw that was like something you'd figured out, and I was like, yes, it can be done.
No, it can be. Yeah. I mean, another Nat Geo shoot I did a few years ago. We didn't have that, but they had like a French press, and we could put it on the fire in the morning and heat up the coffee and do it that way. So it's not quite, and then you can have like powdered milk, for example, if you have milk. So you don't obviously have refrigeration or access to fresh milk or anything like that. It's doable. I mean, it's not quite, espresso, cappuccino, if that keeps you fueled and going, I'm all for it. And I'm a bulletproof coffee fan as well, so I like to add in extras.
I think I have, here they are, some bulletproof coffee.
That goes into my coffee every morning.
Yeah, brain octane oil.
Yeah,
there it is, right in my side drawer. I actually haven't tried it before. I'm like a little I'm a little apprehensive of I've heard people go back and forth on like the coconut oil and how good that saturated fat is for you, and I get like very OCD about what I put into my body sometimes, but I heard what they use in bulletproof. Sorry if I'm going into too much detail for everybody listening who doesn't care about this.
Sure.
I heard that when it's this refined like MCT oil that it's not as bad saturated fat wise.
It's the best part of the coconut oil, like the most potent part. Yeah. I found it really great because and this really is going into too much detail, but like I love my coffee, but it'll be like, it would make me a bit uncomfortable or a bit bloated. And then I started on the bulletproof. Perfect.
Wow.
Totally changed it. So I'm like, I can totally justify dairy now, even though they prefer you don't use dairy in it. Because like I said, I'm a cappuccino girl, so I have to have the dairy. So I definitely approve.
Yeah, my new love is I've been getting really into the Nespresso game. Have you ever used an Nespresso machine?
Yeah, I used to have one in Australia.
Yeah, they're the best. And I'm actually a very big fan of them right now because I called them on Cyber Monday because I was buying an espresso machine for everybody in my family because it brings so much value to my life. And they're like $200 a pop. They're not cheap. But I was like, if I buy them on Cyber Monday, they were 35% off. I could get them for $135. And then I called them and I was like, hey, I saw that you had this one limited edition color that's sold out that's selling for $99. Can you, if I buy 3 or 4 of these, can you give me that price on some of the colors that aren't sold out? And they're like, no. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, please. And they're like, no. And then I was like, do you mind if I talk to a supervisor? I was like, you've been super nice and it's nothing to do with you, but maybe they can work me a deal. I talked to the supervisor and they're like, let me see what I can do. They put me on hold for like 15 minutes. And then she picks up and she goes, listen, it's Cyber Monday. We're super busy. My system's not working. I'm going to send them all to you for free. And I was like, what? I'm not joking. They sent me 3 $200 Nespresso machines to my house for nothing.
That is amazing.
I think it might be because they looked at my profile and I buy so much Nespresso that they're like, if we can get another customer like this.
Like and they're thinking that many machines, many,
capsules that they're selling.
Orders.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
it's kind of like razor blades.
Clever
like
on their part.
They say like the Gillette or whatever will give you a razor blade for free, or a razor for free, hoping that you rebuy the blade. So maybe it was a smart decision by them, but
yeah, definitely.
I was very into it.
Non-coffee people are going to be like so zoned out by now.
Yeah, they're like, I thought this was a wildlife podcast. But moving back to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about wild in Africa.
Yes.
And yes.
It's going to be a huge year for us this year. I say us, which is me. I'm trying to build the business. So I'm preempting the us part.
Yeah, no, I do that too. Like I mean, with my work, like I do have people that I rope into some of the the freelance projects
Yeah,
that I get
I
on.
have some of those.
But like,
So I
I'm
guess we can
always
say
like,
that.
I'm like, we're recording the podcast and launching it every Monday. And it's like, it's just me. Like,
Yeah,
I'm the only one
exactly.
that's doing all of this.
Yeah, that's me. I'm designing them, I'm making them, I'm marketing them, photographing them, shipping them.
Can you talk a little bit about the business itself, what the bracelets are, what they represent? They're really cool. And I'm not just saying
I'll
that
send you
like,
some.
oh my God, I would love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'll get your details and I'll send you some. So what happened was, as I started traveling around and working in a lot of different countries and exposed to different cultures, I started to buy and collect a lot of different beaded bracelets. And over time, it kind of became the signature look.
Mm-hmm.
And so on my social media, I used to get asked a lot about that. And as time went on, there was one point a couple of years ago that I got really, really sick, to the point that I almost died. And that's a whole other long story about the hardships and drama of working in the wild and stuff, tough conditions. But I ended up being bedridden for about 6 months. So the recovery was very slow. And I, at first I was completely out of it, like just couldn't do anything. So I was just sleeping a lot. But as time went on and I started to make gradual progress, I wasn't able to do anything really physical. Mm-hmm. But I was so stir crazy and frustrated, and I needed a creative outlet, and I couldn't get out and shoot. So it was kind of this natural evolution of the idea of, okay, well, I'm physically capable of making some beaded bracelets. I can source the beads. I've been to all these places. I've got plenty of my own that I could, remake or take inspiration from. So it was basically just to keep me occupied, and as a bit of a hobby, I started it and then decided to sell them. And of course, I'm not going to sell something unless it's going to give to wildlife conservation. I mean, that's the whole point.
Right.
So I decided to make a business out of it. So I launched Wild in Africa in May 2017. So it's pretty new. It's like a year and a half old, and it did way better than I expected. So I was really encouraged by that. So I started adding different styles and adding different charities. So when I first launched, I started with one particular charity, which was the Wild Tomorrow Fund. Mm-hmm. And now we have four charities that we donate proceeds to. So, and I have a couple of other charities on the back burner that I'm designing bracelets for as well. So it's really expanded, and they're only charities that I have personally engaged with, physically on the ground, had experience out in the field with, see where the money's going, know the people personally. Right. So I don't kind of pick a charity and go, oh, that's great. No, I really know what's happening, what they're doing. And
which is really important. I think I ask,
there's a lot of dodgy stuff that goes on. So.
Yeah, it's a question I ask most of my podcast guests, is that if people listening want to support certain organizations, where they should look, because there are so many different places that you can give your money, and there are, having spent time in the nonprofit world myself, that there's some people who do a really good job with the money that you're giving, and some people who don't do quite as good of a job, and some people who just are more transparent about it. So it's just nice to know where your money's going and being used. So I think that's super cool to have somebody who has a vested interest, obviously, as a wildlife filmmaker like yourself, to kind of. And
I mean, I get the opportunity to meet and work with so many dedicated people that, I work in some tough conditions, but in the scheme of things, I'll go out and do a project for a certain period of time, and then I'll, have a break, and then I get a change in scenery, and then I might shoot something where I get to stay at a lodge for a little while, or have some nice, living conditions or whatever. And then I go out and, the Zambian carnivore program is one of my newer ones that I recently saw them on the ground in Zambia when I was shooting something for Nat Geo. I think it was October last year. And, oh, my goodness, the work that they do is so incredible, but the conditions that they are doing it all in, and what they do with so little money, and how such little money could go so far. Like, you know how sometimes you feel like you donate to something and, you know, it's like a tiny piece in a bigger thing and you don't know if it's really going to make a much of a contribution.
Right.
I mean, I can see every last cent they are going to milk it, because they are going to, you know, it's going to go so far. And the other thing too is, you know, I sell in the bracelets in US dollars and I donate to them in US dollars. And for every charity bracelet, I donate 50%. So not 50%
Damn.
of, yeah.
Yeah, that's
not half of profits, half of the retail. So everything else is, I wear the cost of production and everything. So it's even better. So it's not like I'm taking all the costs out. Okay, this is what we're left with. You're getting 50% of that. If I sell a bracelet for $40, they're getting $20, and I'm producing it and marketing it and doing everything within the 20 that I'm getting. So,
which having spent time
a long
in
way.
E-commerce too, I don't think I've kind of had my entrepreneurial endeavors in so many different things at this point, to varying degrees of success. Some better than others. I think that's an incredibly underappreciated thing to take on. I mean, I thought you were doing 50% of profits, which I already think is amazing, but 50% of sales is like, not only is that an incredible nominal amount, but it's also an incredible amount of risk that you're taking on, because a lot of this comes from marketing these, and you're spending money on Instagram and Facebook ads or advertising elsewhere to do that. And if that ad spend is more than the cost of the bracelets cost plus the donation plus everything going in there, you can be losing money when you're selling bracelets. Technically.
Definitely. And we're still
and it's hard.
Small,
I mean, that's hard.
You know,
yeah.
So
and I just kudos to you for that.
Well, thank you. We're not churning out, you know, ridiculous amount of sales. We're still trying to get visibility. So this year I'm really going in with a view to ramp it up and scale it, and especially on the marketing side, so I can get the eyes on and get more exposure. So yeah, I've got a few influencer campaigns coming out soon, so hopefully that helps. Cool. And that also then helps with exposure for these charities as well, because they're different, all in different fields. And so, like I said, you know, being Africa based, I'm about to introduce an Indian one soon. Just by way of conversion, the US dollar obviously goes a lot further on the ground here in Africa. So it's really quite effective. And I just did, it's such a great feeling. So I take the money and I donate it twice a year, just from an administrative efficiency perspective, especially because it's just me. And so at the end of December, I tallied everything and did all the donations. And like, I can't tell you, it's so nice to send that money out.
Oh, I can imagine.
Oh my gosh. And then the reactions that come from the charity, and know like how much they appreciate it and how valuable it is and how they utilize it. So that's very cool. Makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. I'm a big fan of them, and I'm obviously going to link them in the show notes. So whoever wants to buy some bracelets, brilliant. Get on it, because the stacks, especially the stacks, are so cool. Yeah, like the stacks of the beaded bracelets. Oh, yeah, very into
they're the most popular for sure. And that's I've just done a whole. So the beginning of this year has been super busy. I've just done a whole website redesign. I've added new styles. So yeah, there's lots of cool stuff on there to shop.
Awesome. We'll check it out for sure. I know we're getting really close on time here, so I just wanted to go and do a few rapid fire questions. I'm looking at my notes, and I'm a little upset that not upset.
We might have to do a part 2.
Yeah, it's just I always usually I say like I get to like 50% of the things that I write down for a guest. This might have been 10 to 15% of the notes I had. No, it's not a bad thing. It means that we had a good conversation and weren't like a good podcast is not a planned podcast, but I learned that yesterday on Conan O'Brien's podcast. But we might have to do part 2, but I'm just going to rapid fire through these quick, if you don't mind. favorite
no problem.
favorite trip that you can remember wildlife? Is there one that sticks out as the most
I have to
memorable or
pick
special?
Komodo Island.
Love that.
Komodo.
Yeah, and that I will also link in the show notes. That was a moment as a wild, that I truly stand by this. I'm not just saying this because you're on the podcast. That was a defining moment for me, watching that video of you doing that. I'm like, these are some badass people that I need to start a podcast to talk to people for.
Thank you. Meanwhile, I'm just there like, oh my God, there's a Komodo near me. I'm so happy.
I was like, I hope that thing
Everyone
doesn't
else
eat
around
her.
me, because I'm filming, but obviously Russ and I are being filmed by another crew, and they're not wildlife people. Their film crew is usually film sets or commercial or whatever. So they're standing back and they're like, this girl is crazy. And they're trying to shoot it from back here. And then as time went on, they progressively got more brave. And they were like, yeah. They're like doing a close pass by, a dragon. They're like, nice. We're teaching them well. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Is there one special moment that stands out that during your travels and your filming, that it was just a moment that you could get really present into the moment and be like, I can't believe I get to do this for a career?
Yeah. There's been quite a few, but I wasn't even actually filming. It was right after I'd moved here, and I was out in the bush. I had my camera, but the light now was quite low, so I wasn't shooting anymore. And we were in the vehicle right next to an adult male lion, and he started calling for his brother, who was somewhere, I don't know, maybe a kilometer away. And it's the first time I'd heard a lion roar that close. He was literally standing next to the vehicle. And I just started crying. It was so poignant, because it was right at the beginning that I just moved here, and it was like, I can't believe I'm here. This is like all of my dreams come true. I'm here. I'm in Africa. There's a lion right there, and it's roaring, and it's literally vibrating through my chest. And it was just so overwhelming. And I get goosebumps just talking about it. It was like tears just started streaming down my face. And I know Russ looked over at me, and he was just so happy, because, he'd grown up with it, and I'd grown up dreaming of it.
Right.
And
right.
he got to be there for the first time that I'd heard that, and it was just magic.
That's beautiful and gives me goosebumps thinking about it. It
was amazing.
This is
the best sound in the bush is that lion call. Yeah.
As a interesting parallel, I'm a big snowboarder. It's probably my biggest hobby. Oh, really?
It's been a while. It's been a few years. Yeah.
I grew up snowboarding is there snowboarding in Australia?
Yeah, there is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But I've done New Zealand, Japan, and Australia.
Oh, New Zealand's like the best.
Yeah, New Zealand. And the powder in Japan was amazing. Yeah.
But I grew up snowboarding in New England, which is known for, it's literally just snowboarding on ice. But they always say that the best snowboarders come out of New England because they're used to snowboarding on absolute shit. It's just scary, terrifying, point down the mountain and cross your fingers that you make it down. But I'd always dreamed of kind of hitting the Rocky Mountains and out west, Utah, Colorado, snowboarding. And I probably had been one of a very few amount of people who've snowboarded hundreds of times in my life, but never done it outside of New England. And last year, my girlfriend and I went to Utah for the first time. And I remember sitting on the ski lift, and it was the same feeling. I was looking out at these mountains that were 5 times bigger than anything I've ever been on, and 5 times wider and larger. I literally started crying. I was so happy. And I got off, and I went to strap in for my first run, and my binding broke when I was strapping in.
No! Oh, no!
So I have these tears of happiness streaming down my face. I'm looking at my girlfriend. We're having this nice moment. And then I literally have to grab my snowboard, walk back to the lift, and take the lift down have it fixed for, they fixed my snowboard for like an hour and a half and then I could get back up. It was like,
no. You were already crying. They could just change to tears of sorrow.
Yeah, it was, I've never been more upset taking
Shame.
that. It's the only time I've ever been on a ski lift going down in my life. And it just happened to be paralleled with like, it's like, what is it? Sisyphus who rolls the rock up the mountain, the Greek god, and just as he gets to the top, every time it falls down. It was kind of like that.
Oh, shame.
So this question, I have a exclusion for the netted dragon cannot be the answer to this question, but your favorite animal that's kind of unexpected. So not like a big carnivore mammal that people would expect.
I would say pangolin.
Oh, okay. How often do you see those?
Does it count if I've never seen one yet?
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're really rare.
Well, it just sucks.
Well,
it's
there are certain areas you can go and almost be guaranteed to see them in the wild, but no, I haven't seen them yet. It is so high on my bucket list. So I adore them. So I haven't seen one yet, but I collect carvings of them.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
That and crocodiles. So like if I look out past my laptop, there are like pangolin carvings everywhere. Like in my view, there's already like 6 right in my field of view right now. And then everywhere I go, if there's a crocodile carving of any form, I will get it. I've got, like wood carvings from Zimbabwe and Mozambique.
That's
everywhere.
cool.
Yeah, I love them.
What did you think of Russ swimming with those crocodiles? Was that worrisome to you at all?
Jealous. No, it was my idea. This is
really?
the problem. Okay, so we were supposed to do that together, and in India in April, but that's not that recent, I injured my back quite badly. I sound like I'm accident prone. I injured my back quite badly there, and so I wasn't able to film for a while. And I've been having physiotherapy like 3 times a week, and a lot of pain medication and treatment since then. And I'm happy to say in the last 2 weeks, I've been off my pain meds for the first time.
Wow,
and I'm allowed to
good.
film again. So now in 2 weeks, I go back to India and get back into filming. So I wasn't able to go on that Mexico trip because of my back injury, even though I'd already paid my spot, booked the accommodation, booked the tickets to go. This was like not a commercial job for us. This was like, oh my God, I want to do this. Let's book it and just shoot, stop. Mm-hmm. And so we're friends with a guy that goes there and does it. So, yeah, I was super disappointed, but I ended up giving my spot away to a friend for free, and I'm going this year.
Oh, you're going to do it?
So we're doing it again, and I actually get to come and do it this time, which was the whole point.
Oh, man,
so,
yeah. He was
I'm
explaining this
with crocodiles and reptiles. So
he was explaining this one moment where he's like, I finally got comfortable in the environment. I was like, okay, I'm doing it. And then all of a sudden, like 2 of them started wrestling and like rolled over him. And it's almost like having like a dragon like landing on top of you. And he's like, then it put it back into perspective what was going on. And I just needed to make sure I was safe.
Yeah, you gotta be on guard. Like I said, that whole complacency bit means you won't be around for very long, especially in those situations. But it was just pure jealousy seeing that footage and those pictures. So I'm counting down, I think, August.
Oh, wow. That's still a little ways off.
Yeah. Oh, it'll come quickly. This year is already fully booked. So it's just one thing to the next. So it's already flying by.
The pangolin I was interested in because you hear all the stories that's really come to the forefront of being the animal that's receiving a lot of highlights for it's the most highly trafficked endangered animal in the world. And I saw these photos it looks like pangolins as far as you can see. And I couldn't understand if it was just, obviously they're endangered, but I wasn't sure if like when you were in Africa, if you were in certain locations that you could see a ton of them, or if it was just that unfortunately these people are stacking them up.
I think part of it is there isn't a lot of research yet to know really exact numbers and population. But in saying that, they're clearly being decimated at a rate that is not sustainable. So it's one of these animals that has no defense. I mean, its defense is to roll into a ball, and that just makes it easy for a poacher to pick it up. And for anyone that kind of knows the terrain or the area, I mean, there's 3 species in Africa, there's 3 in Asia, in Southeast Asia. And for every species, like there's tree, there's ground, and the people that are looking for them, they know where to find them. So they're territorial. So it's like one of these things where you go to a spot, you find one.
It's just too easy.
Yeah, it's too easy.
Okay, well, that was a depressing turn. I took that there down. Favorite book, wildlife related, and favorite documentary, wildlife related.
Okay, so let's do documentary first. I don't know the name of it. This is really embarrassing. It's an Attenborough. It's a series, and it's this particular scene that I just adore. And it's of lions in the Masai Mara. I've even seen the rocky outcrop where they filmed it. There weren't any lions on it at the time, unfortunately. But it is this amazing slow motion sequence of these little lizards hunting flies that are hanging around the sleeping lions, and they're jumping on the lions and they're jumping up into the air and catching them.
Whoa.
And it is awesome. I'm obsessed with it. It's great. And it was a byproduct. I don't think, if I understand correctly, they didn't go in to film that specific behavior, but they noticed it while there, and it just made this incredible sequence. So
that's nuts. Cool. I'm going to try and find that and link it in the show notes. Hopefully I can do it.
Yeah, it's
that's wild.
I'm so bad with remembering names. Like, I'm constantly like reading one after the other.
I also ask people this question as if I read a lot of books, and I really don't. I just do it for the listeners, and I think it makes me sound sophisticated to ask for books, but I literally just watch documentaries all day.
Yeah, and I don't do fiction books. Like, any books that I read, it has to be educational or autobiographical or scientific. So I love autobiographical stuff.
I'm the opposite. I feel like I can only read a book if I right now I'm actually reading Half Earth, which is a conservation book. But normally it's like exclusive to like Harry Potter's or The Golden Compass I just read, which was really good.
Yeah,
I like young adult.
That's where I
fiction.
go to the movie side.
Yeah.
Like, I love the movies, but if it's a book I need to feel like I'm learning something true. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not wildlife related, but the book that I'm reading at the moment is pretty amazing. It's called Alive, and it's about this plane crash with a Uruguayan football team in the 70s that it crashed in the Andes, and they survived for, I think, a few months. It's the story of this, and it's crazy. Amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's super interesting. They need to make a movie on that.
How people get through hardships and survival and all that kind of stuff. So
I think it's the same thing going back to your cheetah bite. It's crazy the extent to which the human body can be pushed and still survive, that it makes, at least me, I always draw it back to going to the gym, and I'm like, I must be stopping at such a low threshold of my actual ability to like push and survive, because it's always amazing the extent to which people can kind of push through.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. I got a wake up call to that. Like I was saying, when I got sick, I'd just pushed my body for so many years, and I didn't realize actually how sick I was until my body just fully gave up.
Oof.
Yeah. It's amazing, the perspective of looking back on something like that.
Yeah, because sometimes when it happens gradually too, like it never really fully grasp like where you're at, because it's just like your new normal.
And then you're like, wow, this is what energy feels like. Amazing.
Yeah. Now when you have that cappuccino, you're wired through the roof instead of
exactly.
at baseline. How about the next? I usually say next 5 years, but it sounds like your next year is pretty stacked. What can people look out for and expect following your channels and your journey?
there's some exciting stuff coming. So we're wrapping up this Black Panther doco, which then will come out at the end of this year, December.
Can't wait.
We've already started into our next doco, which is also a big cat. So it's on lions, one particular lion, also a very unique animal. And of course, we have to pick the hard subjects to make it really difficult for ourselves instead of like a species in general. But this one should be pretty interesting, although we'll be filming that over the course of 2 years. So I'm personally looking forward to the crocs, especially.
Yeah.
Swimming with crocs. I actually get to do a visit home to see some family after, like I said, 5 years. We're doing Jackson Hole for the first time ever.
I think
Very
I'm hopefully going to be
excited.
meeting you guys there. That's what Russ and I were
that'd be
talking
awesome.
about. Because one, Jackson Hole is the coolest place on earth. It's beautiful. And it's like you leave for such a big place, you go 2 feet. It's pretty quaint when you actually get there, but you drive half a mile outside of town and you'll see 100 bison, 300 elk. There's grizzly bears, there's moose. The Grand Teton Mountains are what you want mountains to look like. Like, it's just beautiful. But I'm hoping my film gets into that film festival is why I'm hoping I'll be there.
Too.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
we're
hopefully
hoping the Panther one it'll be a bit before it's actually released publicly, but it should be ready to submit. So also fingers crossed.
Well, I felt good about my chances until I don't know if you can stack feral cats up to a Black Panther.
We are a bit spoiled with the subject matter, I gotta
Yeah,
say.
so maybe I'll be there.
Hopefully
as a
it lives
fan.
up to it. I am very excited about 2020 as well, though, because I start the Nat Geo speaking tour.
Oh, hell yeah.
That's in the US, so I think there's a few booked in already, but they'll just keep adding to that schedule. So I'll be spending quite a bit more time in the US in 2020 and getting to see a lot of places that I've never been before and would never go to otherwise. So, if I go to the US, we go a few times a year. It's usually for meetings in Washington for Nat Geo, New York or LA. That's kind of it, and we'll go for the meetings and catch up with people. So now I'll actually, and depending on how long these tours can spread out over a few years. So I think there's like 90 different cities on the roster. So I'm gonna see
90?
all of the US.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's something that
not all at once. I'll have breaks, but yeah. But they're the city options. So yeah.
That's
I'm
super cool.
excited.
Congratulations. That's huge.
You.
And two, I think 95% of Americans haven't seen that many American cities. I don't even think I could name 90 American cities. But that's awesome.
Yeah, there's probably going to be a few that I don't know of yet, but I will. So I'm really looking forward to being able to connect with people and share my story. And the story of this particular tour is going to be about filming the Black Panther and the difficulties that come with that and my experiences of working as a filmmaker. So I'm excited. I haven't written it yet, but I'm excited.
Are you, is Russ accompanying you for the tour?
No. So I think if I'm in a city that interests him and he has time, he will come along, but he will not do anything like that. He hates being on stage.
The public speaking aspect of it.
No, he hates it. So, he might come along and then I'm sure once he hears me once, he'll probably be bored before I'm even finished. I mean, he's heard it all. He's been there. He knows it. So I know I've done talks in the past and, he just zones out. So
yeah,
it's not really what would interest him. But being there and meeting people and networking, and he's very charismatic and actually more naturally social than me. I'm very I'm an introvert actually. So it's funny, I love doing the speaking engagements. I enjoy getting up and doing the whole thing, but then put me out in a nightclub or to dinner somewhere with a group of people that I don't know, and I'm just like,
yeah,
I just want to go home, basically. So, whereas Russ will go out and that energy fuels him, and he loves it. Go on all night and, talking, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go home now.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're very different that way. Whereas the whole speaking thing is not his
cup of tea.
bit. But there'll be a few. I think it'll be a nice chance that if he's around, he can come to the cities and we can explore a few American cities or areas that we'd love to go visit. I mean, I'm so excited to go to Arizona, especially, and the landscapes like Utah as well. I mean, there's places that I don't even know I want to go yet that I'm sure I'm going to love. So, I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, Arizona.
Hopefully people will buy tickets
cool.
and turn up, because then they'll book more for me.
No, I'm sure they will. I think that's an easy ticket to sell.
So
the last question is probably the hardest of the day, which is, if you could take a billboard and put it on the side of a massive highway that disseminated one message in 10 words or less, what would you choose to put on that billboard?
I'm so bad at being put on the spot with stuff. Okay. I'm looking at my tattoo. I don't know how many words this is. I'm going to go with my tattoo, which says, I'll keep you safe, you keep me wild.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
Basically, if you can serve nature, it will give back to you.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's super cool. And I think that's a great way to kind of wrap up the whole conversation in terms of putting a good bookend on things. So that was super fun. I'm like really appreciative we finally made it work. And
it's my pleasure. My apologies for the delay.
No, not at all. But I'm genuinely could not be bigger fans of you and your husband. And
Thank you.
I'm going to link to Wild in Africa as well as all your website, social channels in the show notes. So everybody listening, please check it out. It's absolutely incredible work. And thanks for listening. And until next time, stay wild. Thank you so much for listening. I honestly cannot express how much I appreciate you taking the time. For all information regarding this episode's guest, social channels, books, how you can support, etc., please check out our show notes. If you enjoyed listening, please subscribe to the podcast. We are everywhere that you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Escape the Zoo on YouTube, follow Escape the Zoo on Instagram, like Escape the Zoo on Facebook, and please share with your friends. It honestly goes so far and means so much to me. And lastly, if you'd like to be emailed with each new podcast and any other major Escape the Zoo updates, visit escapethezoo.tv and sign up for our email list. Thank you.